Today I'm joined by my Great Aunty Peggy and my grandmother Pam, and who are both very young women in the Second World War. And today we're just going to be asking them a few questions about the clothes rationing. So first of all, how old were you when clothes rationing started?
I would have been 17 or 18.
I would have been 11 or 12, something like that.
How did it affect you when the utility scheme started?
Well, instead of being able to go to a shop and choose any clothes that you liked, because you were issued with a book of clothing coupons, you had to see how many coupons a dress would cost and whether you could spare that amount of coupons or whether you ought to save them for something like your shoes wearing out.
Yes. And it was very difficult if you were growing too quickly as well, because you didn't want to waste clothes, so your mother would take you out and buy your clothes much too big so that you would grow into them. And I never did grow very tall, so quite often my coats were very long and the sleeves were very long.
Must have been a hard time for mothers then, wasn't it?
Yes, also most schools had a clothing exchange where when you outgrew any of your school uniform, which I think schools still had even during the war, you could take your outgrown blazer to the school and you could see if there was a blazer in the right size for you, and you didn't have to give any coupons up.
And when things got thin that you were wearing, for instance, men's shirts, their collars used to fray inside and their cuffs used to fray, and then the women used to get their sewing machine out, unpick the collar, turn it so the fray was on the other side, and take the cuffs off and turn them as well to hide the fray, and put them back on to make the shirt last longer. And we did lots of darning, didn't we, Peggy?
We did, and as well as that, you were only allowed to use a certain amount of cloth in the garments, and
yes.
Men's trousers used to be fashionably have a turn-up, but during the war that was stopped, and they had to make any new clothing had to be made men's trousers without a turn-up, and women's clothing couldn't use more than a certain amount of fabric in the garment.
And when your socks wore out, you didn't throw them away. You used to have a mushroom. It was shaped like a mushroom, and it was to put inside your sock or stocking, and you would have to darn it and go under and over and under and over one way. Yes, and then back the other way like a basket, like weaving really, to make it neat and comfortable to wear again.
And also, if a dress or shirt got too old to be used anymore, you would have a look and see whether it would make a dress for a small child if you had in the family. You reused all the material.
Yes, children's clothes were often made out of adults' leftovers, really.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
What things would you and your friends do to keep up with fashion because you don't want to get too behind your times, if that's that what you're going to say?
Well, over to you, Peg. What about the legs?
Well, yes, skirts were only allowed to be a certain length, and of course full-skirted dresses
took a lot of material.
Took too much material to be allowed, but I don't think that, I think people were still kept fairly smart, you know, the styles were adjusted to the amount of material they could be made from.
But some fashionable women who hadn't got enough coupons for new stockings definitely used to paint their legs, didn't they?
Yes.
Yes, to make them look a bit tanned, and then paint a seam up the back, or draw a seam with
an eyebrow pencil.
Yes, an eyebrow pencil up the back to look like the stocking seam. Yes.
is there any iconic clothes that you can remember that you made?
Yes, balaclava helmets for the soldiers. All the time at school, sitting in the air raid shelters, those of us who could knit, little girls who could knit, would be knitting for the soldiers. We'd knit socks, gloves, scarves and balaclava helmets. I remember that.
Yes, because you could get wool in Army and Air Force colours.
Yes.
If without coupons, if it was going to be used for garments for the forces.
That would be sent abroad with our name and our age on it, and then we'd quite often get a letter back from a soldier. I've got one somewhere, and I can't think where it is, but I have got one somewhere. Yes.
And I went into the Women's Air Force for 3.5 years, and of course I had no clothing coupons while I was in the services because we had a uniform supplied to us. But when I was on leave, I liked to change into civilian clothes, and I needed a coat, a winter coat, and I managed to get hold of a blanket, and a local dressmaker made me a coat out of it.
Yes, excuse me, it was a utility blanket, wasn't it?
It was a utility blanket,
I remember
yes.
it was prickly.
Yes.
Because we walked up the 217 to a dressmaker up there somewhere.
That's right, Gander Green Lane.
Oh, Gander Green Lane.
Gander Green
yes.
Lane.
Amazing.
Yes, and I've got a photograph of myself wearing it.
Yes. And then Jean, my best friend at school, because by this time I was about 11 or 12, her father used to post the bill posters on the underground railways, and sometimes he would bring 1 or 2 home, and we would boil them in Jean's mother's kitchen, and that you got nice white muslin from it, and then we would make a blouse or something like that to wear with it. That was quite nice.
Or if you could get hold of a parachute or part of a parachute.
You got a part, didn't you?
I had part of a parachute, yes. You could make underwear from it.
Night dresses, yes.
Night dresses, yes.
Yes. That's right.
So, apart from the parachute material, was there any other advantages of being in the LAFs with clothing, like doing anything?
None at all, because you know, we naturally just had to wear our uniform the whole time.
And you looked very smart as well.
It was only when we were on leave that we could wear our civilian clothes, and we didn't get much leave either, you know. It was very seldom that you were able to get home, especially in the 6 months leading up to D-Day. All leave was stopped, so even though I was only stationed in Norfolk, I couldn't get home for 6 months.
So the war ended, and what did rationing go immediately back in? Immediately stopped,
Yes,
or did
food rationing went on many years.
Yes,
Clothes rationing.
food rationing. I had to have rationing books when I got
Yes.
married in 1954.
I've
not for
still
long.
got my ration books,
Mm.
yes.
So often when clothes rationing was going on, you had to make do and mend with the clothes you already had and things you could afford, and with the coupons and everything. Do you still carry on doing that to this day?
Well, it affects you your whole life, that you can't bear to waste things and see people waste things. So it does happen. It did have an effect definitely on us, I think. I don't know about Peggy, but it did me, the way you look at things.
It still does. Even though I'm 92, I can't throw anything away without holding it up to see whether I could make something out of it. It's something that you got so used to having to do.
So clothes rationing itself has really affected you in what you think of old clothes and things like that.
Oh yes.
Yes, it has. But no, I mean, not in a troubling way, you know. But
no, but you don't want to waste.
you don't want to waste, no.
No.
And that's a good asset.
And
to
the
have.
other thing is, we all sew. I think you'll find that most women of our generation could sew, some better than others, but we all used to make our own clothes. That was a big thing.
Because even dress material was rationed, it was so many coupons a yard. But if you were clever, you could usually make a dress
Yes.
and save a bit of coupons with less coupons than it would cost to buy the ready-made dress.
Yes.
You know.
I used to spend a lot of time as a young girl sewing, making
Yes,
things.
I can remember.
Yes, yes.
I did too.
You did, yes,
Yes.
definitely. Because obviously wool was rationed as well, so if you wanted to make or if you were going to throw a jumper away, for instance, you'd think, oh, I could undo that and make
If it was
something
hand
else.
knitted,
If it
yes.
was hand knitted, yes, which most of them were, weren't they, then anyway. And so you would get a chair, and you would wind it round the back of the chair, the wool, as you undid it, and then you would tie a bit of a different colour wool each end, then go and wash it in the sink and rinse it out and hang it on the washing line, and it would drip, and all the wrinkles would go because all the wool would be wrinkly because it had been knitted for so long. And then you'd wind it into balls, someone would hold it, and then you would wind it round and round into balls and knit something new with it. Yes.
Was it in the World War that you learned how to knit and make all those blankets and things you make?
Well, whether it was coincidence, I don't know, but I suppose, for me, I suppose it was in the war, although our grandmother used to teach us, didn't she?
Yes.
She was
Well,
marvellous.
it wasn't so much for me because I was 16 when war broke out, and I was already making my own dresses because
Yes.
people did make their own.
Yes, everybody
They
did.
made their own clothes. I wouldn't say men would, of course, but women usually did make their own
Oh,
dresses,
yes.
didn't they?
And the children's
Because
clothes.
always
the
bought
children's
things were more
clothes.
expensive. Yes.
Yes.
You always knitted children's vests and that sort of
Oh,
thing.
always, yes. In fact, at school, I can remember in what they now call primary school and we called infant school, we learnt to knit, and I can remember having 2-ply wool, which was very thin, in pink, and learning how to knit a vest, two plain, 2-pearl vest, and also we had balls of cotton that looked like knitting wool, but it was cotton, and we would knit dishcloths in spider stitch. We went round two needles, took it off, and then round one needle, and 2 and 1, so you got this like a spider's web, and you made dishcloths out of it. And that was at school as well.
Well, the fashion houses were still going strong as they had before the war, but they had to keep within the bounds of the material allowed for each garment. But really, fashion became very smart because it had to be pared down and less fussy. It really, I think people did manage to keep up with the latest fashion. But when war ended, there was a great revival, and it was called the New Look.
Yes.
And then you were allowed to make long coats, full skirts,
down to
the ground. And I
calf
can remember
length,
it went
really.
from one extreme to the other. And I can remember my first New Look winter coat being like that. It was tailored, but it had a full skirt, and it was almost down to my ankles.
Yes, I had one as well. A donkey brown colour it was, and double-breasted.
Yeah.
Yes, and then it flared out.
Mm.
Yes.
So in the war there was more simple and plain designs.
That's right.
Shorter
yes.
skirts.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, shorter
Everything,
skirts. weren't
it kind of
they?
went back to how it was before the war broke out. So thank you for all the information you've put into my brain.